our first visiting artist today is Michelle Ott. And
Hi.
yeah, she wants
Hello.
to say. And so Michelle is an artist that I know from around town, and I thought she would be a great person to have as our first visiting artist because I also know her from teaching at California State University, Chico, and she has some kind of similar ideas with teaching and with what art is in the community. I know her also, she helps out with the local 1078 Gallery, which is the local basically community run gallery space that we have here. And so she's had a great show there and then has helped with different things. She's done some interesting shows in San Francisco and has experience working with galleries and different museums. And then she also has this great project that she did where she's gone a few times to Antarctica and then created work based off of those experiences. So I just would like to welcome Michelle. So we'll give a round of applause.
Yeah. Just like a clapping emoji or something.
Yeah.
Hi.
Do you guys see her in the little side view here? Okay. Okay, good. That's what we wanted to make sure was showed up. Okay, so I'm going to be asking Michelle some questions, then I'm going to show some of her work as well. And so, you know, the first question I have is what type of work do you create? Is there typical materials or projects that you like to work with? And you wanted me to show the photos from that drive, correct, Michelle?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you can show the.
Oh, we've got some more people. Awesome. Oh, great. Yeah. So I had no idea we had many.
Howdy, howdy.
All right. So everybody, all my Butte College students. So we are being recorded. So if you want to make sure your name is not on here, please, you know, adjust that. But we are, so this is like an exciting thing because I'm combining Butte College with Chico State students. So Natalie, Benito, Jade, and Stephanie, they are from Butte. So if you guys want to just wave there. And then Bert and Alex are my students from Chico State. And I believe they were both students. Yeah, okay, awesome. So this is exciting. This is fun to see. Okay, so Michelle, let us know what went into creating this.
Yeah, so the first question about what kinds of materials I use in terms of like actual materials and then also concepts, I thought this was a good picture to kind of illustrate the different things that I use and that I make. So in this photo, it's an installation in the gallery where you can see there's a drawing on the wall and it connects two different photographs. Okay, so on the left side, you see a diptych and it's sort of a landscape of it's actually the hazardous waste yard in McMurdo Station in Antarctica. And then the drawing is a drawing of the ice runway building. So there's these buildings that sort of sit out on the sea ice that are temporary and they make up a runway. So you're going out there, it's like a very temporary little town that's set up, and that leads to the right. The image on the right is a photograph that has a hand-cut surface where I've peeled away some of the surface. So that process is kind of part of what I do as well. So in this picture alone, you can see drawings and photographs, and then this kind of one-of-a-kind hand-cut photo, which I think of as kind of another layer, another step in my process. I also use sewing and fabric. Frequently, I print on fabric and then make objects out of those things. So I have a series of ice sheets where I've photographed ice in Antarctica, and then I've embroidered on the sheets these data sets from Antarctic science. So if you get really close to those, you can see some of the embroidery on them. And then I have a lot of illustration projects. So outside of my art practice, which this picture is an evidence of, there is another practice, which is illustration work. And frequently my illustration work is very client-based. So I worked for Blue Bottle Coffee, or I just did a little project for a company called Leaf Cutter Designs, and we did these little miniature postcards that you can print and play with at home. So some of those kinds of things are more like client-based. And then in the picture that you see is like, that's my personal work.
Great, awesome. So let's go back to trying to find the other, maybe I closed out of your other, okay, here we go.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, do you want me to show a photo from here?
Sure, yeah, if you want to start with those first three, the very first one, you can see this is like, this is the second example. So in the first picture we looked at, that was a gallery, and that was an installation that I put up for a group show. This is an installation that's in public. It was in LA, and as Blue Bottle was opening a new store, they did this big vinyl wrap on the front, like a coming soon. So this is my drawings that are enlarged scale. You can see the little doorway, and they're kind of put out as a teaser for a store that's gonna open. I mean, this is years ago now, but you can see that like the drawings are used in this way to give a little teaser effect for like what's coming behind the wall.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I love the simplicity of the drawings, but that it also shows kind of the elegance of each of these different types of like the cups, and that it's just so elegant of like a device to pour that it makes you really excited about this coffee that's coming in. Like, this is not just a regular coffee shop, right? This is going to be really, you know, high-end coffee. All right. Another, oh, that's you.
A shot across the little courtyard, I think, of the same location. Yeah. Yeah, those are sweet to work on. You know, it's like different parameters for different types of locations. So thinking about like what needs to go in the space. So this is a project that I did. I was invited by a curator to create a site specific. I mean, this isn't related necessarily to a different question, moving on, but this is a project that I did for the city of Corte Madera. They had a 100-year anniversary, and I was invited to do some project that's based on this site in the center of the city. They have a park, and the park is clearly like a very central location for many different kinds of people. So there's sports, and there's like all different kinds of things that happen in this park. And when I went to the park, I noticed like how many different types of activities there were, but people were really active, they weren't sitting. And so when I was there, I realized, oh, I wanted to create something that would inspire or invite people to take a moment and actually just enjoy that site for its own purpose, right? So what I did was I was working on a different project that required these big photo prints on fabric, and I made this project called Turn to the Sky, which is where I sat in these different sites in the park, and I laid down and looked up, and I photographed what you would see, and then I made a quilt, a picnic blanket quilt. So it's a picnic blanket, which is sort of an invitation, right, to like sit down or be on the ground. And that quilt, as it sits on the ground, it reflects what you would see above it. So this picture is kind of a detail of what the picnic blanket looks like. And if you go to the next picture in the folder, Rebecca, you can see the actual quilt installed in the site, in the exact place where the reflection was. So for the opening, we had all these different art projects that were public out in the park, and mine was sitting out in the park, like in the actual places. So when you would go to that spot where you see the picnic blanket, when you looked down, you saw the same thing that you would see if you looked up. So it was kind of like, I thought of it like a little portal to just be floating in the sky.
That's so interesting.
Oh, it's not loading.
Yeah, let's see. My internet's okay.
Oh no.
Let's try it again. I know, we're so excited. We want to see this photo now.
Yeah, it's cool to see that sort of the idea of a reflection. And then the duality of like creating a contemplative space in your mind. So the reflection of like having the physical reflection, but then the duality of like a reflection where you can take time to actually reflect.
Yeah. And so how was it set up so that people wouldn't just walk off with these?
Yeah, well, it was only outside during the opening reception. So that was like a 2-hour event. And then if you look on my website, there it is. So so during the event, there was this and many other art projects, like sort of sculptural, like a sculpture park we set up, sort of a temporary sculpture park outside. So we were all outside and there was a lot of people milling about and doing things and engaging with the work. And then for the duration of the show, everything came inside to the community center. And if you go to my website, you can see a picture of it installed in the gallery, and then the actual picnic blankets just laid on the floor in the center of the gallery. You can kind of see the front and the back. We did it so you can see the quilting. Yeah.
Great, great, awesome. Well, you know, you guys know that I love quilting and be working with fabric. So another reason why I really love Michelle's work. All right, let's see. Well, I think what we'll do is just go through your work and then I'll ask you some questions that way. Okay, so good for you.
So this is a show I did last summer, and this is like an alcove in the gallery, and you can see that some of these pictures are illuminated because these are prints that are shown on a light box, and the prints are photographs from Antarctica, and they all have some kind of human-made element in the picture, which I then cut out. It's sort of like an erasure, and I'm peeling that part away. And when it's shown on a light box, that part is very illuminated. So you kind of get this idea that the human-made that's been removed is illuminated. And I think of them like these tracings, and it's a play on the idea of like leave no trace, which is sort of impossible in my opinion, because despite our best efforts, there's always going to be sort of a trace. And in Antarctica, it's just very evident. Any human interventions in the landscape are very clear because there is like literally nothing else around. So you can kind of see that, and you can see the change over time really quickly. Just like ice melting is sort of the climate change kind of poster child, right? I know an artist who called it that once, and I thought that was like such a great way to say it, which is you can see it so quickly and so easily.
Yeah.
And so I make these cutouts, and they're sort of my own negotiation with like the idea of going there and being there or working there, and what are the advantages, what are we gaining by it, and what is being lost by going there. So this is like one aspect of what was in the exhibition. And then these are I call them ice sheets actually, because they're not exactly quilts. They're these flag. I think of them as flags actually. So they're fabric and they're embroidered, and this is kind of what I was talking about earlier with working with fabric. These are ice sheets that are photographs of the actual ice sheet, like when I would have been standing on it. And then they're printed and hung like flags so that you can see this, these embroidered details. Although you won't be able to see the embroidered details because they're sewn with clear thread. I have a tendency to like make these things that are impossible to photograph in reproductions, but it makes them really great in person. So, that's kind of the constant saga with some of the art projects that I do, where I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to be impossible to show what it looks like in person, but in person, it's kind of like to do that, little details like that.
Well, we can see it here. So these
Yeah.
kind of hung up, and then you've got some.
You can see if one of, yeah, that's like a single one, an individual one, if any of those will load. I know on Zoom, it's like everything takes longer, huh?
Well, yeah, and my computer's like, hey, wait a minute, I'm already doing this one thing over here. Why should I do this too? All right, come on.
I have a question.
Sure.
Why Antarctica? What made you interested in traveling there and studying that?
So when I was in college, I went to art school called the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and I studied abroad actually for a semester. I went to Paris for a semester, and when I got back, it was going to be my last year of school in Minneapolis. And so I grew up in Minnesota, and I have like just sort of a deeply embedded affinity for like snowy landscapes and snow and cold weather. And I had a boyfriend at the time who was applying to go to Antarctica, and I was like, you're gonna have such a great time, what a great idea. I had just been traveling, and it sort of dawned on me over the course of, I don't know how long, but I sort of realized like, oh my God, why wouldn't I do that? I should go do that. Like, it sounds so perfect. I can graduate from college and go to Antarctica and like sort of be like, what else am I going to do? Am I going to get a job? I have an art degree. Like, I might as well try to work to travel. So I got the job there that season, and, was like a dishwasher for half the season, and then was a baker. And I just worked to be able to travel afterwards, and then spent a bunch of time in New Zealand and on the West Coast. So it was like, I had already had like a million jobs before graduating from college, but it was like my first job outside of being in school. But I heard about it through him, and he wanted to go because he wanted to be an astronaut, but he couldn't because he has glasses. And so he decided he wanted to go to Antarctica. And then when I heard about it, I was like, oh, I want to go to Antarctica. That sounds amazing. I didn't really think of it as an option. And then for me, I ended up, it resonated a lot, and I went back after 4 years after that first season. I went back another 3 years in a row consecutively.
Yeah, so it wasn't just one time.
Yeah. And the reason that I liked it was partly because it did afford me a lifestyle at the time where it was like I could work in this concentrated segment because it was a contract job. So we worked 10 hours a day, 6 days a week for the entire contract. So you work a really intense period of time from like October until February. And then in February, you kind of get spit out, and you've just been working and you didn't have any expenses, and you can have this time afterwards. And so as an artist, I really like valued that. I valued that idea of like working really intensely and also photographing there, and kind of being in this phase of like, that's when I'm trying to earn money. And then when I would leave, it would be like, oh, now I can process my film and make photographs and have a little bit of time in between the seasons to work on actual projects, which I think I found from working full-time jobs that was really challenging to like actually make progress working on art projects. So when I was doing that contract work, it was kind of like a nice balance of having some time, but then having this kind of intensive seasonal job.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool.
United States Antarctic program, if you're interested.
There's what?
It's the United States Antarctic program, USAP, and different contractors hold the contracts for like support staff jobs, but there's, people go every year.
The United States, what is it called?
Antarctic program.
It was good to hear that story again.
I know you guys, that was funny. We only heard it on like the last day of class, huh?
It was like the last 3 weeks or something.
Yeah.
I remember everybody finding it pretty funny.
Pretty sure it was like the last day.
The last day? Really?
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
so.
because we're talking about the cookies.
Oh.
Ah.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. So I learned how to make round cookies in Antarctica. And the first season I was there, so you can see the United States Antarctic program if you want to learn more about it. But my first job there was as a dishwasher, and eventually one of the bakers had to leave the station, and I ended up getting this job as a baker. And food is a huge source of salt there. And so, and also butter and flour and sugar, it all freezes and you can use it and it still tastes the same. Like there's all these reasons why baked goods, you know, give people pleasure and they taste the same in Antarctica. And so one of my jokes is that I learned how to bake round cookies for 1,000 people at a time because there was 1,000 people on station, give or take at different times, but we would make round cookies. And the woman I learned how to bake from, she got her job on the basis that she guaranteed she would make round cookies once a week. And the reason that round cookies are remarkable is because typically when you're doing production baking, you know, baking a sheet and cutting it into bars is a much faster way to make cookies for, let's say, 1,000 people. But round cookies are actually a source of like morale and comfort for people. And so you feel like you're getting this your own special cookie, you know, in a way. And so I learned how to make the round cookies there for like massive amounts of people.
Great.
So actually at the show, at this gallery show, there's not a picture of it here, but at the 1078 gallery, I did a program where I invited an Antarctic scientist who was on an expedition, and she came into the gallery and she did a lecture about her trip that was in the field, in the like dry valleys and on the polar plateau. And during her lecture, I brought round cookies that I made for everyone. There was like 35 or 40 people there. It was really cool.
Great, and Michelle does great baking, and I appreciate that about her as well. I'm not good with
I
that.
know, I think Alice and Bert got to eat one of my cookies.
I ate a few.
Yeah, I was about to say it was not just one. They were too good just to pass up on one.
Yeah, not many people can say they learned how to make cookies in Antarctica. So
Yeah.
with some small goals we can try for. Okay, so our images just are not loading up, so I'm going to just go forward and ask some of the questions.
Nice.
And I have your website up too in case there's things we can look at in there. So you kind of talked a little bit about your work and the kind of the processes that you go to. Since you're talking to a bunch of students, I'm curious to know if there is a specific class that you took that really kind of influenced either what direction you went, maybe something you didn't like, kind of how that kind of influenced you.
So I started college at the University of Minnesota and in Minneapolis, and I, you know, at the time I wasn't like an art major, and you could choose this, like, it was probably a drop-down menu or something where it's like undecided was your major, and I was undecided that whole year. And so I took classes in like the widest range scope of classes. I was in Latin and film studies and women's studies and anthropology, and like I took a million different classes, and it was great. I couldn't really get into art classes because I wasn't an art major, and I was really active in the University Film Society. So I volunteered and I worked at movie theaters then. And so I really wanted to be able to like work on telling stories and possibly make movies. And I looked into it at the University of Minnesota. They didn't really have a filmmaking program. So I transferred to this school across town, the art school. And it was really tiny little art school attached to the Minneapolis Institute of Arts, where they did have filmmaking. And my advisor was like a filmmaking teacher. But once I got there and transferred, you have to take all the foundation classes, you know, and I took like photo 1 or something. And I found that there were 2 teachers who were teaching photography classes, and their sensibility really resonated with me. And I just took more and more of those photography classes, along with screen printing and paper making and some other fine art classes. And they all ended up being these like very two-dimensional, flat-based work classes. Just, even though I was fulfilling requirements, I did take film and video one, or I did take sound classes, but at the time, my official major was like media arts, I think. And I do have a degree in photography from there, mostly because when I met those two teachers, Catherine Churchon and David Goldie, they just resonate. I just kept wanting to take their classes, and like their sensibility matched mine, and they took my work seriously, and I learned how to use the 4x5 camera and the darkroom and all of those very process-based disciplines resonated with me. And so I kept doing them. And so I would say that like what happened was, despite like trying to find a place where I was gonna, like, let's say be a filmmaker, I found that the photography it just resonated in a way where I could still do these portrait projects and still represent people in a documentary way and tell stories, but it didn't have to be a narrative.
Yeah.
And I still work like that to this day, where it's like I do things that are very process oriented. So when I do an illustration, I do a drawing, and then I frequently scan it and I turn it into drawing the negative, and then I'm making multiples of it for a postcard, or I'm making multiples of it for a print, or I'm turning it into a quilt, or I'm turning it into something. The drawing or the photo is like the starting point of a process that I'm taking. And so the most important classes to me were like very process oriented. It happens the same way for baking for me. Like I really like baking because it's the step-by-step process, and I love the result because I love to eat. But I like love to follow these like steps. So frequently when I do a drawing and someone's like, oh my gosh, that is that drawing. I'm like, oh, that's not the thing. Like, that's not going to be the actual thing. You know, the thing is like 5 steps down the road.
Uh-huh. Nice, nice. Great. Okay, so what are you currently working on?
Well, I have a project called the Postcard Machine, possibly from the future. And I just did, oh, they're in the other room. I just did a really small project illustrating these tiny postcards that you can print, download and print. It was sort of art directed by a woman named Lee Redmond. You can download and print them and give them to people inside your household, you know? So it's like a postcard that you give to someone that you are quarantined with, basically. So I just worked on that. And then I have the like larger thing that I'm working on is actually, you know, continuing with projects about Antarctica. So this is a picture I have in the studio of the Barren Glacier and Mount Erebus, because I'm kind of constantly working on, I have a little artist book that I'm working on that I actually need to kind of put into high gear, and then a bigger book proposal that would be incorporating a lot of the different projects that sort of run together about it. You know, other than that, it's like just the last 6 weeks have been weird. So I'm just trying to cook food for myself and like clean my house a little bit and figure out how I'm gonna get an income. So yeah, but those projects are, you know, the main like art projects that I've been working on.
Great, awesome. Okay, so has your website been useful as an artist? So let me get that back up.
Yeah, so having a website for me, it's not a medium for my work, it's just a portfolio.
Okay.
So I value and appreciate artists who work online, actually. But for me, the best thing about having a website is that it's a place where I can refer people to see the sort of diversity of things that I work on. So like you can see illustrations for books, and you can see just my own personal drawings and postcards, or there's a commission there. Because I do the kind of work that looks different from even itself sometimes, although you all look at it, I'm sure, and see like, you can kind of see my personality a little bit. if I'm trying to tell someone what I do, it's much easier to look at these kinds of pictures. So when I say I make photographs and I make illustrations, those two words don't do what this website does, right? So when you look at this and you see illustrate, you hear the word illustration or you hear the word photography, you're like, oh, this is the kind of illustration or this is the kind of photography that you do.
And so you basically have all of your images set up here.
So on the front page, what I learned is, and I used to like try to put it only project by project and stuff like that. But I had a friend who was kind of helping me, and she was like, I don't know why you don't have to separate everything out. And so on that first page, I put as much stuff as I can, like as I'm doing it, so that you just get to see a hit of images. You just get to see like what's on there. And then at the top, you can see I have this sort of different things. So the online emporium is like a little shop, and you can go there and buy a few things that I sell. It's really modest, but that's a great thing for me because every once in a while someone is like, how can I buy something from you? And I'm like, you can go here, there's 5 things, you can pick from it, and then that kind of handles like credit cards or back end stuff. And then if you go back to the website at the top, you'll see, yeah, so this is like the product. And then if you go back, yeah, there you go. If you go back here, then I have like illustration only, but it's very similar to the front page. And then if you go to the about section, it's like a bio. And so it's like my information about me and then like 150 word biography that sometimes, you know, is useful for people. And that's more like, I feel like the bio is really great for, you know, people who haven't met me or they are like, who is this person? What do they really do? And then the next part at the top is projects. And so those are like kind of self-contained. So for each one, you can kind of like see the different, the sort of depth of what each project kind of entails. So here you can see all the gallery photos from the installation. And then as you would scroll down on this page, you'll see the actual illustrations by themselves. And you can look at those if you want. So it's kind of like each project can kind of have, and this is the part that, you know, I don't update as frequently that I need to. Like I have a few things that it would be great to update more frequently. And that's why that front page with just like having images is really useful, because I can just upload an image that I've worked on and it's done and it's there and someone can see it, but it's not like, here's the entire project or something.
Yeah.
So it becomes like a repository. A lot of people, when I first started trying to figure out how to have a website, they're like, just make a blog and post on it, or have Flickr and post on it every day or something like that. And I've found I don't work on the computer every day, so but I have found that it's so nice to like be able to have this as like an archive.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it for sure.
Oh, and then the postcard description. So I do a Patreon page because of my postcard project, and it is like a subscription service for postcards. So this has been great too, because this is like, if people ask or they really like my work and they want to support me, they can get a postcard in the mail every single month. And so I do these mailings every month, and it's partly a project because I make new postcards every month and then send them out. And then it's partly this wonderful thing that it's like an income stream that is really modest, but right now it's like essential for me. So it's been a great project because postcards are inherently just like a thing that I want to promote. You know, people writing to each other or people collecting small pieces of art. And then also the postcard machine itself, when I do performances with it or when I do different projects with it, this is like a really cool way that some of the people I've met at postcard machine events I am still in touch with them because they just want to be actively engaged with the postcard machine.
Yeah.
And it's really sweet. It's really sweet to like know some people who just met me because they saw the postcard machine, and I've like never had a face-to-face conversation with them, but they like want to get a postcard in their mailbox every month that they can then use to send to someone else. So it's a sweet little project.
Nice. That's great. I have one of them on my fridge here. If we go to your homepage. I have this on my fridge.
Ooh, grapefruit.
Grapefruits. I bought it at the fair, the print fair.
Oh yeah.
1078.
Chico print party.
Yeah. Okay.
Michelle,
Kind of already answered that. Yeah. Bert, you have a question?
I'm gonna say the limes button you made at the end of last semester is still in that classroom. It's just hanging on the wall.
What is?
You made a button with that lime art piece you had in your website, and it's still on the wall.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's still there.
Are you in that studio right now?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, the whole college is closed.
He's there. That's right.
He has a photo from our classroom. They had this magic day where they were had the brooms all standing up, and so it became a joke in our class.
Nice. I like the animated brooms idea.
Okay. Are there any artists that have influenced your work?
Well, yeah, aside from the teachers, the two teachers that I mentioned, and additionally, like all the teachers that I worked with in grad school, I really, there's a couple of different artists that I think of because I think their careers are just so dynamic and like don't involve one single thing. So Wendy McNaughton is a visual journalist, and she actually does what she calls visual journalism, and so she sort of writes stories about all different kinds of things. But she's had different columns in different places, and I really like her work, even though it doesn't necessarily look like mine.
Yeah. So what's her last name again?
McNaughton, MacNaugh. Yeah, Wendy McNaughton. And so she does these projects she does illustration projects, but then she also has like these flow charts or different stories where she's illustrating and drawing out the story. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of resonates with me, and I really am influenced by her work a lot. And I had a show in San Francisco at like a gallery that has a coffee shop, and I went there to go get a coffee and like add something to the show, and she was sitting outside. And I didn't get to talk to her, but I was like, oh my God, Wendy McNaughton saw my work. So I was like starstruck because she's like, you know, even though we have mutual friends and plenty of people I know her. But it was really sweet. So Wendy McNaughton, I just think her work is really wonderful and sometimes really funny. And, you know, she kind of incorporates all of these different things. I also really like Myra Kalman's work. And she's also an illustrator. Well, she's a painter, I think she would say. But she does these books that are just so like memoir. It's Maira.
Yep.
Oh, it's kind of frozen. I can't see it. But anyway, Myra Kalman. And she does like paintings that are very like self-referential and just like about her life, about her daily life. And she has these photo projects where she'll like follow people and just take pictures of the backs of people all day in New York. And I really like her work a lot. I think it's really fun to look at, and it tells these like stories about what she's thinking about. And I value and appreciate that. There's like a very long list of photographers also that that are sort of important to me. Alex Soth is a photographer who is from Minnesota, whose work resonates a lot. He photographed large format, really quiet, like images, landscapes and portraits.
What's his last name?
It's Alec, and his last name is Soth.
Soth.
Yeah. And there's just probably so many others, like so many other artists. I mean, he has a lot of different kinds of photo projects. And so that work it's just really thoughtful, and it always kind of resonates with me. Like, I like to kind of know, sometimes he's doing a print project, and sometimes he had a Winnebago workshop where he's like driving a Winnebago around with high school students photographing across America. And so I love projects like that are like, we're all going to make a bunch of pictures. And, even though his photographs are really beautiful, he's also really magnanimous in terms of like looking at other people's pictures and talking about those. So yeah, he's like another person whose work I've always really thought about.
Yeah, great. Also what I'll do is I'll kind of list these for you guys too, so you have these resources to look at later. All right, if you were in school today, what tip would you give yourself?
Well, actually, the best advice I ever got was apply for everything, expect nothing. And I thought that was great, and I agree. Like, if you think that you have a shot or you're curious about something, apply and see what happens. Because, like, don't stop yourself from having an opportunity because of your own self-doubt or something. And then what other kinds of advice? I guess in the current sort of world, I would hope that people would, take a certain amount of deliberation with what they're studying, but also not to forget to study the things that you're interested in, and ultimately that you feel like you're good at, or that you want to be doing or drawn to, because like there's just no time like now to like actually kind of dig into something that you're interested in. And those places, like where you do sort of like dig into something that you're interested in, are the places where I think frequently you can make the biggest contribution. Because when you care about something, inevitably you're going to be able to give it more and be able to like inspire other people and sort of make connections to other people, compared to if it's like I'm working on something that I don't care about, or I'm studying something that I don't care about. And I realize it's a really fine line, but it's definitely a thing that I would want to keep in mind as a student right now.
Okay. So is there anything that you're doing differently now since COVID began?
Yeah, I'm at home all the time. And so my jobs have stopped. I have a couple of little things that I can do, with the Gateway Science Museum. I have a little bit of things, but mostly like my jobs have ended. And so what I'm doing now is kind of trying to reassess, and like I took everything out of my studio and I'm reorganizing it, and I'm like trying to not put pressure on myself in terms of like having deadlines for projects.
Yeah.
So for me, that has been a much, it's been useful because I can go through certain things and then try to bring them back to the studio and then try to focus. It's not really a period of time where I'm able to focus super well, but it is a period of time where I can kind of like reassess and be like, okay, I'm gonna, things just take a lot longer, and I'm like, I'm gonna cook a long meal, or I'm gonna do certain things that are like kind of taking care of the basics. And yeah, so like my day to day has shifted because I don't have to go anywhere. And you know, what I'm doing during that time is like, I mean, my attention span has been like a squirrel for a couple of weeks. I was just like, you know, days just like passed. And I started settling into like something that's a little different. So hopefully that'll change as well. Yeah, the main thing though, honestly, is that I have no excuses not to exercise. So I exercise every single day.
Wow.
That's on the list. I'll just be like, no thanks. And I'm like, you don't have any excuses. You can't go to your job. You know, like you have to like do that. And so I've been pretty good about doing that every day. And I'm pretty happy about that, like physical.
That's great. I keep telling myself I need to do that, but I haven't been that great with doing that. All right. Do you guys have any questions? Here we'll go into the gallery view.
What was the job that you had before COVID-19? Or like, what did you just lose?
Sure.
Or... Go ahead.
I work part-time at the bookstore in downtown Chico.
Oh, okay.
So I work at the bookstore, and so the bookstore closed. And so that was like my primary part-time job on top of doing freelance projects, or like I taught last semester. But like I had a freelance project fall through, and I had the bookstore job that ended temporarily. I mean, I'll go back to the bookstore if we reopen, you know. But those are the things that I mostly did with like my time outside of, you know, trying to work on the studio project.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you get your name out there in the community?
You know, almost all of the types of projects I work on in terms of like that are high visibility. So like the illustrated books, like I've illustrated a couple cookbooks. Both of those are literally from day jobs that I had. So the first book was Blue Bottle Coffee, Craft of Coffee. And the first job I had at Blue Bottle was like as an office manager. I just had a day job, and I would draw pictures in the roastery for like signs, like rotate the milk, and I'd do an illustration, or, you know, this is what the grind is supposed to be, and they just noticed it. And as the company grew, I was like, you know, you're asking me to do these drawings. I could do more if I did this, and I would pitch like, here's a job I want to do, and eventually became a production artist there. And then like that book, you know, so working with places like that that grew at the same time was amazing, because then I got to meet people. And then I illustrated a book about candy, and a similar thing was like, I worked in a bakery for a woman whose name is Janie Curl, and it was great. I mean, I just was like slinging cupcakes and like making cake and baking and stuff. It was just a day job. And then like fast forward 10 years, and, you know, I keep in touch with her. She's suddenly writing a cookbook, and I'm like, I'll illustrate your cookbook if you ever want me to. You know, we just kept in touch. And then it was like, great, 10 Speed's gonna publish it and stuff like that. So it's really like making sure that where you're at, people know what you do. You know, even if you are working in an office and you're like doing data entry, but making sure that everyone around you knows that you are a visual artist and you do things, they're gonna like keep their ears open for you. And they're gonna be curious, you know? Mm-hmm. And then the other thing was keeping in touch with people, even though I would move away or like go to Antarctica. So making sure people know that I want to still be in touch with them or work on projects with them. And those are kind of the two main things. I had a boss once at a place called the Art Directors Club, and she was really smart and inspiring in that she sort of talks about young people working with other young people and like making things and keeping in touch with people. It's different and easier now, I think, because of social media, but at the time she was like, you're gonna grow with what they grow. So like if you keep in touch with a classmate who did something you thought was interesting, 5 years from now when they start something else, it's like, oh, cool, I'm gonna call them because I know that I can do illustrations for their, you know, apps that they're making or something like that. So it's kind of like keeping in touch with people and making sure that people know what you do or what you want to do, even if that's not the thing you're doing in that moment.
All right, thank you.
Those are really great tips, because yeah, you'd be amazed at the people that you interact with that later on you're like, I'm so happy that I, made friends with this person. And so it can be from unexpected places a lot of the times. And so, yeah, and it's getting out there. And so like, for us, like we got to know each other more too because of the 1078 gallery. So one of the first things I did when I moved to Chico was find the art center that would draw the other artists who I were, kind of interested in finding. And that's really what helped me to kind of get started here in Chico as well, is finding that community. So I think that's incredibly important there. Awesome. Any other questions? What's your favorite food, Michelle?
Oh my God, I love pizza so much. I like a lot of food. Pizza is, I love shishito peppers, which are also the Spanish version is a padron pepper. It's like this little pepper, and some of them are super spicy. But over this quarantine, I've got a sourdough starter, and I made sourdough pizza crust, and that was like a huge accomplishment. I was so stoked, and then I got to eat pizza. Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, it's pretty basic, but it's also really good.
Yeah. Oh, we love pizza. We make it all the time. Stuart makes it all the time. I don't make it all the time, but yeah, we love it. Do you guys have any questions about anything that you're thinking about with your own, whether or not you might want to make a blog or a website? Do you have anything with that you might want to ask a question about?
So what service do you use for your website?
Sure. So I still use mostly online sources that are free. So I use WordPress for my website, and it is a little bit. It's like I know there's probably other more automatic things that have layouts and stuff, but I use templates in WordPress, and then I use Big Cartel for my online store, and they have a feature that you can have five items, and then it's free. So those two things I use right now because I don't earn a lot of money from either of those things yet. And I've found them both to be pretty easy to navigate, and then the templates are appropriate for me, just really straightforward, and they highlight the work. So those are the two online things. Patreon is the postcard subscription service, and I found that really useful and easy to use as well. And I don't even use all the features it probably has. Like there's probably a more in-depth way to sort of utilize actually all three of those. But for me right now, those are the three main things I use online, and they don't cost me anything, but like I can drive people there, and people can use a credit card, or they can see my work, and there's all these different things. So those are the three main things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
I also use Instagram. That has been a really cool thing. I don't have a Facebook account, and I have never really wanted to join Facebook, but I decided to join Instagram, which eventually Facebook bought anyway. But I like it because it's really visual based, and there's
I like Instagram too. It's really cool.
Yeah, there's not a ton of other. I mean, there's ads now and stuff like that, but you get this like flash, and it's images. The first thing you go to is images. I don't navigate on Facebook because I don't have an account, but the thing about the Instagram, because I'm most interested and I care most about the visual stuff. So I know a lot of photographers who also use Flickr, and they love it because it's just like mountains of photos. It's literally just like photo, photo, photo. And so I've always been curious about that. And that seems like a really interesting community too for photographers. Like I have friends who've met up with people in person. And so Instagram has also been neat because I've met certain people where I have like relationships with them, or like, different places will post and it connects you. Obviously that's what social media is, but I've found that can be just like a really easy referral in terms of like what my work looks like too. Like not just the website, not just whatever. Be like, you can just look at a lot of stuff I make on Instagram. It's really easy to see, but I don't post a ton of personal stuff. So it depends. Like I have some separate Instagram accounts for projects because I'm like, this is a specific project. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. Let's do a
Welcome.
round of applause.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Oh, this has been great. Yeah, I think you were a great first person to have as our artist here. So thank you. So do you have any last things you want to say?
If you guys have other questions, feel free to contact me. Now you've seen my website or you know my Instagram handle, but if you have other questions that come up over time, just let me know, especially if it's like related to what I already do. I'm happy to chat more or like talk to you more about other things.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Thank you. I can't see the next artist.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.